Hi, my name is Diane Schuster, and you're watching one of a series of videos that demonstrate the capabilities of COZYROC SSIS Plus, which is a software suite of tasks and components for SQL Server integration services. These demonstrations were built using SQL Server Integration Services 2005. The COZYROC tasks and components are available for SQL Server Integration Services 2005, 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, and 2014 in both 32-bit and 64-bit editions. For more information, please visit www.cozyroc.com. In this video, we're going to talk about the QuickBooks Destination component, which you can use to integrate or migrate data to the QuickBooks Online Edition as well as the Desktop Edition. In this demo, I'll be using a QuickBooks Desktop Edition. This component comes in a package of tasks and components called SSIS Plus that complements the standard SSIS. In COZYROC SSIS Plus product, we provide source and destination components for QuickBooks which support both 32-bit and 64-bit modes. In this demonstration, I'll show you how to create composite objects such as invoice line items. The invoice is the main object, and there could be any number of line items associated with the invoice. COZYROC's QuickBooks Destination component recognizes the end of the line items associated with the current invoice when it reads a null record. First, we're looking here at the data that we're going to be using to create the invoices. And the customer ref.listid is the field or the column that QuickBooks will be using to identify the customer that we're creating the invoice for. These customers already exist, so it already has all of the address information and other general information. And here's the data that is about the specific items or services that were purchased by the customer. So the first group of 3 will go on the first invoice, and then there's a null line, and then the next group will go on the next invoice, and then another null line. So you have a null line in between each group of line items that belong to a particular invoice. And be sure to include a null line at the end after the final group of line items for the final invoice. I've already updated the connection manager to point at the Excel file that contains the data that I was just showing you. And we have 2 Excel Source Plus components already set up here. And the one on the left will read the data from the first spreadsheet I showed you that has just the customer name, full name, and the list ID for the customer. And then the Excel Source Plus component on the right will be reading the data from the second spreadsheet that has the individual items that were purchased by the customer that will go on each invoice. Now we're ready to drag our QuickBooks Destination component onto the canvas, and we double click and go in there and choose the QuickBooks Connection Manager, and we'll be using the Create action. And now we go down and select the object, which will be invoice in this case. And now we get out of here. And now we'll connect the components so that the data is being fed into our QuickBooks Destination component. So for the input coming from this source, we're going to use invoice for the main object. We click OK. And now for this source, we connect it. And now we'll choose the input called invoice items invoice line and click OK. Now we can go in and finish configuring the QuickBooks Destination component. So we'll go to mapping, and this is showing the mapping for the main object invoice, and that has already been mapped because the names match exactly. And now we go up here and we choose the other input, which will be the invoice items invoice line. And only one of these columns has been automatically mapped, so we'll need to manually map the other 2. So we map full name to item ref full name, and we'll map list ID to the item ref list ID. And now we go into error output, and we want to change it so that it does not fail on error and it will redirect the row. In addition, it'll provide us with all the resulting information from processing our invoices. So now we go in and configure another Excel Destination Plus component to receive the resulting information from the creating of the invoices. And we go in one final time. And we'll take a look at the columns. And it automatically creates the 5 columns that it uses to provide information to us about errors and the IDs of the objects that were created. And it also has the 2 columns from the main object. And we click OK. And now we're ready to execute. And we have success, so we go and stop debugging. Then we take a look at the execution results, and we have no warnings or errors, and it says that the QuickBooks Destination wrote 17 rows. Now we're looking at the Customer Center in QuickBooks itself, and you can see there are 4 customers here that have balanced total amounts other than 0, and those are the 4 that we wrote invoices for with this demo. And now we're looking at the invoice we actually created for Andrew Allister. In this demonstration, I showed you how to create composite objects, such as invoice line items in QuickBooks, so that they're associated with the correct main invoice object. This component comes in a package of tasks and components called SSIS Plus that complements the standard SSIS. And that concludes this demo.